Hello and welcome everyone, wherever you're tuning in around the world. Welcome to the second season of the Zwift Grand Prix. This is Zwift's Invitational Elite Race Series. And the formats are even more varied this year than they were in the inaugural series last year. 7 rounds spread across the next 4 months. This is the place to be to catch elite racing. The men's race, as you can see, is due to start in just a little over 9 minutes. My name's Jez Cox. I'm making my Zwift debut with you this evening, and I'm pleased to say I'm in the very capable and Zwiftly experienced hands of Hannah Walker, who is joining me on the mic. Hey, Hannah.
Hey Jez, looking forward to this one. As ever, this is a series, a Grand Prix that's been put together with so much variety and so much that can happen over the next 7 rounds, and very much looking forward to the first one that we kick off with tonight with the Points Hunter.
Absolutely. Well, we're sticking in the real world settings for both the first and last rounds, and the same format as well, the format of Points Hunter. Tonight it takes us to the 2015 UCI World Road Race Championships finishing circuit in Richmond, Virginia, and the circuit which we're going to be taking in 2 laps of. Now, tonight's format, the Points Hunter, is really the ultimate way of testing a team's strategy and skill. Let me just explain a little bit for the people at home. 2 laps, and each of those sprint points are sprint points, as you can imagine, where points can be scored. However, as the 2 laps go by, the amount of points and the number of people that can score them goes up. The crucial thing to understand, though, is anybody who scores any points at each of those points is immediately eliminated from the race. So strategy is going to be absolutely critical. You can see on lap 1, there's only 1 rider scoring at each of those points. Of course, as soon as they've scored, they are out of the race. So the person who scores that first sprint at the first sprint point is immediately eliminated. Hannah, this is going to be absolutely fascinating to see how the teams do this in their teams of 5 riders.
It's going to be incredibly arduous and attritional throughout the whole race, and strategically the way in which teams come into this and how they've planned for this. I mean, it's one thing coming in with a plan, but it's another thing executing it, because we've got 16 teams here, all made up of 5 riders per roster, and each of those teams very much looking towards the same type of strategy, and the tactics are going to be incredibly important.
So 16 teams, 80 riders. Shall we get into these first ones? Hannah, talk us through here, because we've got some big hitters on this first page, haven't we?
We certainly have. Aber Synergy, the all-Belgian squad led by Lennart Tergels. They finished 3rd last season. They'll be looking to try and move up the ranks and to try and come out on top. But Lennart Tergels, of course, a professional on the road too with Bingoal, so he'll be a crucial part to that team. Beast Mode, a new team for this year, led by Christoph Thiem. They've got their experienced sports director Seb Wolf to lead that team. With BL13, another new team on this first page, led by the British rider Andy Nichols, their sports director in the virtual team car, Daryl Carter. And then we have last year's winners, Coalition Alpha, led by their sports director Reese Howell. But they have got 5 riders, 5 different nationalities, very international squad, but they're led by Lionel Vyarsin, who is arguably one of the most experienced esports riders here in the race tonight.
Can Coalition Alpha do it 2 years in a row? Let's see. On to the next page. Deepak Elite, new team to the Zwift Grand Prix, and a couple of Welshmen in there, one of whom worth looking out for, Ed Morgan. He's made very steady progress to this very high level at the elite end of Zwift racing. Keep an eye out for him tonight. Another new team as well, the Foudre Poncheurs Coalition, the French team with the 1 Belgian rider, the Tom Breyer. By the way, if you're wondering, Foudre is French for a large wooden vat for holding wine. Originates from the Rhone Valley, so we know what they'll be doing if they're celebrating after today, or after any of our rounds in actual fact. Keep an eye on the boys in light blue. Hexagon were 8th last year, looking to get up into that top 5 this time as well. So consistency will be absolutely key for the team in orange and black. And then there's Movistar. Their women's team were 4th last year. Their men's team was 6th. Their target, I'm certain, will be the podium this year in the second edition of this race. They have 2 top 10 finishers from the UCI World Championships of Esports. Harvard Klednes was 7th, and Kjell Power, the Belgian rider, was 5th.
Now this is a team, Jez, Next Esports, powered by Ensured. They finished 4th last season overall, but arguably the 5 riders that they bring to round 1 here in this Grand Prix you would say are one of the strongest teams on paper. Now, putting it into practice, they're being led by James Barnes within their squad, the South African. He was 8th at the UCI Esports World Championships, and you take a look down at the strength in the power that they have within that roster. Looking forward to seeing them race. A new team, 2 new teams actually, Primor RWB and Restart, as well as Saris. Now, Saris is a team that we've known in esports for a long time, but new to this series, led by Matt Gardner. They also have a late addition to that squad with Holden Komu, which is great to see. They've got an incredibly strong squad, 5 Americans within that team, and then they've got Stuart Miller for Primar to lead that team of 3 Irish riders, a Brit and a German, and then Restart with Gustav Lindqvist.
Right, on to the final 4 teams then as well. Team Castelli was 7th last year, as you can see, and they have racing with them the American Nathan Guerra, who of course, for many of you will know as the voice of Zwift really, and certainly the Zwift Community Live community, the veteran racer. I can see him on my screen in front of me right now. We're going to be bringing him in during the race and having a little look at him while he's racing, see if we can squeeze a word or 2 out of Nathan as well during the course of the race. Team Swedish were 12th last year. Their women were 7th, and I know on both fronts they'll be looking to move up this time as well. Toyota Elite were 2nd. Now they're very clear what their goal will be this year, finishing 2nd last year as well. And they've got a lot of talent in there. Very, what should we say, kind of level team. There's no weak players in there either. They're an extremely multinational team too, as you can see. And then finally, Wahoo Lacole. Their women were 2nd last year. Their men were 5th, which makes them the top performing team across both categories. And of course, they have that runaway UCI Esports World Champion in there, in the Dane, Bjorn Andriesson. Those of you who watched it last season, the World Championships, will have seen Bjorn Andriesson ride away from the whole field. Now, if he does that today, he'll be in serious trouble from the start, Hannah, because he'll score just the 4 points and he'll be out of the race, which might not be what his team want. But let's see. What a team, though, eh? Wahoo Lacole. Right, we've got 2.5 minutes.
Looking forward to seeing Wahoo Lacole and looking forward to seeing the World Champion stripes in this race too. Yeah.
It was an incredible win, that by Andriesson, and it's obviously exciting to have him here amongst the world's best Zwifters too. It's going to be quite a race. This is going to be fascinating because you and I were talking just before we came on air, Hannah, about the opportunity that some of these 16 teams actually might not score any points, and yet you could finish the whole race with all your riders and still score no points, potentially, if it's going to be that hard. And this is not an easy course, Richmond, is it?
It's not an easy course, and especially with the quick succession of the 2 climbs that we'll see in terms of Libby Hill and 23rd Street. And so it makes it incredibly attritional, but there's little time for any rest or recovery.
No, absolutely. Well, look, one man who's going to have very little time for any rest or recovery, unlike us, is Nathan Guerra. Now, I think we can just check in with him. Let's see if we can see Nathan warming up. I can see him smiling. Hey, Nathan.
Hey, you guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. It's good to have you with us. Are you warmed up, fired up, and ready for this start? Because it's going to be hard, isn't it?
I've been warming up for like a month and a half, I think. I'm super excited for this. I'm really excited. I've been, on the other side of this and jealous sometimes. You know what I mean? Of like, I want to race. So I'm super excited. Plus, I know a lot of these guys. We're having fun in the pens chatting. But it's all going to go off. And I think gloves are going to go on. And the friendship's over for a little while.
Awesome. Nathan, can you tell us anything about the tactics of your team, Team Castelli? Anything give away? Don't worry, no. Or maybe, could you tell us anything? No, don't do it to you. No, don't. Nathan, don't say anything.
There's going to be a lot of people saving from across all the teams, I think. So.
Okay, interesting. Right, very interesting. Thank you, Nathan. Good luck. We'll try and check in with you when it's not too hard. Fantastic to have Nathan Guerra with us. We've got 30 seconds till race start. We can see the riders there held in the pen, as Nathan described, just getting in their final warm-up. These are really nervous moments, Hannah, because this is the highest level of Zwift racing, and it's going to happen. It's all going to kick off very soon.
It is, and the nerves will be high because, of course, the pressure's on to make sure that you can try and deliver for your team. And let's not forget, this is a team race, not an individual race.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the individual winning that last sprint for those 8 points doesn't necessarily mean anything in the team classification, because all that matters is the points you amass as you go through it. And do not forget, folks at home, I'll remind you, every single person that scores any point, even if it's just one, is out. Right, the riders are out on their roll-in. As they go across the finish line for the first time, they will all pick up a power-up. If you're new to watching Zwift, that effectively means it's a little magic power-up that you have in your pocket as such to use. And in this instance, it will be the aero power-up. Now, aero power-ups, if you're not aware, give a rider, when they choose to deploy it and use it, a 15-second 25% reduction in their drag. So there'll be that little bit more slippery through the wind, just for those 15 seconds though. When they use it is up to them, and they get a second one the second time across the line. So this is heading westward now on our course towards the finish line, which is a very linear course, the Richmond, Virginia course. It's quite flat on the way out, and then the hills really come towards the end of it. I've got one rider pushing on already by the looks of it, Hannah, as well.
We do. This is one of the riders from BL13 who is, by the looks of things, trying to get away. Looks like Joel Lewis. And he's taking his opportunity early, Jez, here, because the first sprint location comes after 4.2 kilometers into the race. And so if they can try and pick up 4 points and get points on the board early, they're already putting themselves right up there in striking distance. And as we said earlier on, Jez, some teams might come away totally empty-handed here without any points whatsoever, such is the nature of tonight's points hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. So 4 points available on the line, the sprint point, which is our first sprint point. It's out just after a turn, in actual fact, over near Carytown, the west end of Richmond, Virginia. It looks like a little chase is being mustered though from behind. If you're new to watching Zwift, if you look just beneath each of the riders' names to the right of the flag, you'll see their watts per kilogram. And if you're knocking in the 5s and 6s for these guys, you are absolutely caning it. If you look down the numbers there, you'll see just what some of these riders are doing as they're pressing on in that pack, and the drafting effect in there is really useful. I should just point out, Hannah, it's worth us pointing out, isn't it? There are all of these bikes and equipment for these riders is neutralised for the Zwift Grand Prix. So the fact that you were seeing Tron bikes in there, different coloured bikes and different equipment, actually is all nullified and neutralised for this whole series, isn't it? Which is good.
It is. So any wheels that you opt to choose, any bike in-game that you choose, whether that be the Zwift concept bike, which is the Tron bike, which I personally love. You can see it with its fluorescent wheels. The day glow looks fantastic, but all of the equipment is neutralized for each and every rider and every team.
So Joel Lewis is getting nearer to this first sprint point. He's taken the turn, coming away from Carytown now, along Monument Street, where he should see, he's on Monument Avenue now, that first sprint point. Once he has gone through it, he'll be given the signal from his sporting director to sit up, and he'll drift out the back of the pack, and that will be him removed from the race. Let's see who's moving up, though, as well. The man you mentioned earlier, Holden Como, the late entry, right at the front there, the American for Saris. Saris no pins in the white with the kind of pinky red stripes on the pink bike. Also there, Hannah, as well, another man you picked out, James Barnes, 8th in those UCI Worlds, just off the front there, pressing on the pace. So maybe showing some intent from their teams that they want to see if they can get at least some of these 4-point sprints on this first lap. I'll just remind people at home, there are only first place points available at each of these sprints. Only the first person across the line scores them. I guess, Hannah, for one of the good things about that is you could roll across the line 2nd, 3rd, 4th or 5th and you're not out. You're still in the race. Whereas when we get into that second lap, I'm still wondering whether there might be some riders and teams who are thinking, no, we don't want to get 4th, 5th in case. We want to wait and save it. I can't believe that's going to happen. It's almost impossible to do once the racing's on, isn't it? Look at these three sneaking off the front.
They're sneaking off the front, but it means that Lewis, when you take a look at the time on the right-hand side, he's holding that gap of 10, 11 seconds. And now we're starting to see a little bit more pressure applied at the front, and perhaps realising now from teams, he's snuck off the front with, and I wouldn't say relative ease, because it's been incredibly difficult, but the way in which he's done it, and there has been no big chase so far, Jez. Now teams are starting to realise we can't be holding back too much longer, because here with Lewis, once we see B13 powered by Level Velo get some points on the board, I think there's going to be a huge stampede behind.
Oh, Joel Lewis is looking good. He's been knocking on somewhere between 5.5 and 6 watts per kilo since he attacked. Now we've got some new names coming to the front. We've seen plenty of the Deepak Elite riders coming to the front. On this occasion, it's one of the Welshmen, Ed Morgan, Zwift Racing League regular. He's just drafting back now. Of course, we see in a pack this big, where we've got, what, 79 riders there. We might have lost one or two just off the back, but not many. The kind of washing machine effect, as we talk about it in the real world, really finding its effect as well. There's the monument at the far end. So we've now turned and coming back along Monument Sprint, approaching that first sprint point on Monument Street, I should say. And that's why we're seeing the pace really being picked up now. I can't see him being caught, though, Hannah.
Looking at this time gap, Jez, he's already got the arch right in front of him, and with a lead of 10 seconds, Joel Lewis, I think, within him and his team, and bearing in mind, they're a new team here, he's going to take the 4 points, he'll be eliminated this time, and for me, a new team, and they've come here to stamp their authority.
Absolutely fantastic to see BL13 in that funky yellow and orange kit take it. Poor old Joel Lewis now gets passed by everyone. He is coasting, and we have an attack as well. They're coming from one of the riders in the new kit, that isn't it? That's Restart, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Matthias Petri, the German, on the attack, but he's being joined by others now as well. I think I was very surprised, Hannah, that no one else went actually on a full-blown attack like we saw Joel Lewis do on that first lap. But that first sprint point on the first lap.
It's one of those, it's quite like what Nathan Guerra was saying just before we went to the start. A lot of teams are wanting to save. They're wanting to save this energy and go for the big points towards the back end of tonight's race. And so it's a big gamble. Do you risk everything and try and go for the big points towards the back end? Or would you prefer to play it safe and get points on the board early on?
Well, this is a big attack by one of the Swedes on the Team Swedish Zwifters. And it not looking like he actually hit out really hard there. It was sort of 9, up on the upper 8, 9 watts per kilo. It's getting maybe a bit scientific for people who aren't used to their Zwift, but those of you who Zwift regularly will know exactly what that probably looks and feels like if you go to it. It's a place where I guess you can go a little bit into the red, can't you? And might take a bit of recovering from, by the looks of it.
But there's very little places, I think, once you go into the red on this type of course, Jez, and especially on the second half of the course where we see Libby Hill and 23rd Street, if you go so deep into the red, and by that your heart rate is elevated, you'll struggle to try and recover from that. And so consequently, as we see Noren, who is just opening up a gap of just over 3 seconds, consequently you could put yourself right out of the race and not score any points if you race too aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the back end of that pack. 1 or 2 riders still just working their way back in and trying to hang on to the back of it. Hannah, for people who are new to watching Zwift racing, or even actually to taking part in Zwift racing, and it's so accessible, what's the art to that pack riding? Because you watch it and you seem to move through so quickly. Of course, the riders are so close together. You do get that drafting effect. It helps to be in there. But where would you want to be if you're saving yourself in there right now?
Right now, if you've got a plan and you've had the discussion amongst your team, your sports director, your team manager, for me, you want to try and save towards the back end, and your plan of attack is to go for the big points towards the back end of tonight's race. Try and sit yourself within the top 20 of that bunch, because you're optimizing the draft and optimizing the fact that you are almost getting sucked along. It's like in real life racing. If you're sitting on the wheels, you've got the benefit of the riders in front of you. So I think it's make sure that you aren't putting your nose in the wind, making sure that you're well protected. And the very experienced Zwifters, those who have raced on this platform for a long time and have raced in esports for a long time, they've got it down to a fine art.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Noren has got his power up, and I think he's using it as well, getting super aero as well. using it right now. So he chose a moment to use it on a long straight run as well. There he gets his 15-second, 25% reduction in CDA. So frontal area, drag, the amount of suck he's creating in the air. That will have been just giving them a little bit of a kick as well. Well, here he is going to that next point. This is the second one, Broad Street. And we have an attack also coming from another rider from the Deepak Elite team, also using his aero. So Broad Street taken by Noren of the Team Swedish Zwifters. And again, we have another individual. This is an interesting tactic, I guess, Hannah. This looks very deliberate to me. Individual riders taking it in turns, one lap at a time, to attack, try and get ahead and score their 4 points and have that rider eliminated.
This is the first time that we've actually seen and as we see the team points there, B13 powered by Level Velo on 4, Team Swedish Zwifters on 4 points. This is the first time that we've seen almost a counter-attack. Now that that's been nullified, Jeffrey Muller of Hexagon in that orange and black kit has now been caught by the main pack, and the gap to Burms has been brought back to 6 seconds here. The next point will be Libby Hill. That will be after 12.9 kilometers of racing.
Yeah, Burms has gone really hard as well. He's settling now. You can see he's going downhill at that point, which is why the watts have dropped a little bit. We've seen him already use his aero power up too. And those points will change, those team points will continue to change radically, because don't forget on this first lap it's only the 4 points scored by the one person who goes across the line on the 16.3 kilometre laps of this Richmond circuit. Fantastic racing circuit, nicely varied, and as Hannah mentioned though, grippy towards the end, because the next well, sprint point isn't a sprint point, it's a KOM, it's the Libby Hill KOM, and that's what Tom Burms is going for here, but I think he's going to be caught by the looks of it. He may have gone a little bit too deep too soon. Either that or he's sitting up.
I think this is a combination of the fact that there's started to be a lot more momentum on this downhill section of the course here from the pack behind. And of course, a larger pack is going to be travelling at a much faster pace and speed than one sole rider out front. And Burms, the Belgian rider from Deepak Elite, his effort has come to nothing, and now it's important, Jez, that he tries to get some recovery and respite here so that he's still got something left to give to his team afterwards.
Yeah, we're back down on the sort of southern eastern side of the course, very close to the James River as well. It's a very lifelike realisation of the Richmond course here as well. We finished this whole series, by the way, back in Yorkshire, and Zwift's long history of involvement with these World Championships is, well, there we can see our World Champion right at the back, Andreasen, with his World Champions bands on. The first time I picked him out, Hannah.
That's great to see, isn't it? Isn't it nice to see the World Champion bands in this race, and for him to be showing off those rainbow stripes in the first round here in the Points Hunter?
Absolutely. If you're yeah, as I say, I'm very much on a charge this winter, Hannah, to try and bring people over to Zwift who maybe aren't used to watching it, or who've gone, yeah, it's not for me really. The Points Hunter is just the best way to show you how well you can work as a team together in the virtual world. It's a brilliant format, and all of these riders are connected using earpieces to their team managers. Some of them are doing it in vicinity of each other's, but others are spread all across the world, connected through the internet, hearing the voice of their DS, telling them what to do. What do you think Abos Lecol's team DS is saying right now, I wonder?
I think the sports director Koen van Gate is saying to his rider, his Belgian rider here, it's now or never. And I think once you make an effort, it's got to be 100% commitment, because I think if you try and hold yourself back to 65-70% effort and it doesn't pay off, you've used a lot of effort for no reward. And so on this first lap particularly, where there's only one rider and one rider who will score at each of the points, until we get to lap 2 where that'll go deeper down as we go through each sprint, I think it's now important that you're getting that encouragement from your sports director, and you're also being given the time gaps. Verhalle has started to increase his lead now, 8.4 seconds of an advantage, touching on 9 seconds. And so this is very much about the encouragement, Jess, because 12.9 kilometers into the race is where he'll get those points on Libby Hill. And Libby Hill is no mean or no easy climb. It's quite a mean one with an average gradient of 6%, and it's 600 meters long.
Yeah, it's got 3 or 4 switchbacks in it as well. It's a tough one. He has that yet to come, and he's been laying it on thick. He hasn't dropped below 6 watts per kilo at all, really, since he's attacked, which is why he now has nearly 13 seconds of lead over Lennart Tugels, that pro team rider in the real world who's chasing him in second, although he is, of course, his teammate. So he may just be marshalling the front, Tugels, those two both riding for that Aber Synergy team. Don't forget, that team third last year in the inaugural Zwift Grand Prix. So they are looking to build on that and be dominant this year. And it's a good way to do it. They've started well.
Quite like Team Swedish Zwifters getting 4 points on the board earlier on, Jez. Last year they finished 12th overall, and so they want to come back into this new season of the Grand Prix and hit the ground running. They want to try and score early on, and they want to make sure that they've learnt from the first season of the Grand Prix and that they can come into this second season now and really stamp their authority. They've been away, they've had some rest, they've done all the training, and now really put that into practice.
Rhinus Verhalle closing in on that the base of the climb. The road already starting to make its way up again now anyway. There's a couple of little kicks before we actually get onto the climb proper, the KOM point. And this is bunched up a little bit more now. There's not such an obvious chase at the front. As we look down the watts, though, it's really being pressed on. I think really we've got a lot of a lot of heavy watts being laid on back there. A lot of 8s. Here we are into the climb. Verhalle, let's see just how this takes its toll on him and how well he can hang on, because he's been pushing it hard to this point, Hannah.
He has, but what he's been doing is keeping that consistent effort too. You know, he's always been very level, very concentrated with the power output that he's been doing, and in terms of the energy that he's been expending currently. And if you can try and keep yourself as calm and cool as possible in this moment, but also have good guidance from your sports director in your ear, he's timed it perfectly. He's coming down. He was at 16 seconds towards the bottom, but he's got to the top of Livy Hill.
That's it.
And he
it was close though. Yeah, it was close. One of the Welshmen as well for Elite there, coming after him. But at the moment, it won't mean anything unless he can keep this going as well. This is Ben Jones. So Ben Jones, the next of those riders who looks to press on. Verhalle gets that 4 points. It's closing
There's
up.
Only 1.1 kilometers. There's only 1.1 kilometers to go until they get to the next climb. That's on 23rd Street. And so now you've had this intense Libby Hill climb, Jez. You've got to try and have a quick recovery and now try and take the next points in less than a kilometer's time.
We're seeing the team points there on the left-hand side. Aber Synergy level on points with Team Swedish Zwifters and BL13. Of course, 3 different teams, 3 different riders, all eliminated, leaving their teams with just 4 left to try and hoover up the rest of these points. Plenty of teams in there in those 16 teams who haven't scored anything just yet. What have they got to play? Big attacks going into this final one. As you say, a tiny gap really between these two, up and over, and another climb up to this final sprint point, 23rd Street. Just the 4 points this time, and then before we know it, we'll be straight back over the finish line once we've gone through 23rd Street.
This is a really interesting move from the Czech rider of Next Esports, powered by Insured, of Turek, because he's trying to go long, but look how quickly Dawson is coming across for Wahoo Lecole.
I think he's just gone through the point there. Yes, he has. There you go. So Turek gets it, but boy, that was the closest so far, Hannah, wasn't it?
So close.
Boy, was that close. Being chased by Dawson, the Irishman. And now we're going to get the attacks coming over the top. They will get, as they next go through the finish line, they'll get another aero power up to use on the second lap. First lap nearly complete now. So that means, once again, it's another team. 4 different teams have scored those 4 points, leaving Aber Synergy, BL13, Next Esports, and Team Swedish Zwifters all leading, but so much to do on this second lap when the points start really racking up. The next time they go through the next sprint point, there will be 4, 3, 2, and 1 point. And don't forget, everyone at home, all 4 of those riders will then be eliminated. This pack will keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller over this coming second lap. This is when it starts to get really tough, Hannah, as we look down on the world champion again on the right-hand side, right in the middle of that pack, just sitting there and waiting. None of the kind of riding we saw him do in those world championships where he took off by himself, but this is completely different. It's there's a velodrome track race called the reverse win-out, isn't it? And it's kind of like that, but this is better than the reverse win-out because the whole team is reverse winning out, and all that really matters is how your team scores at the end of it. It's such a perfect format for Zwift.
It certainly is, and I think the interesting thing is, will teams sacrifice perhaps 2 riders to go for these early points and then have 3 riders in reserve to try and score big in the later points? So when we get to Libby Hill the next time, where you have 6 riders who can pick up points, or 23rd Street where you can have 7 riders pick up points? Or do you go big and wait all the way to that finish line? But there's going to be 54 riders going to that finish. And so do you want to gamble that you're only going to be one of 8 riders to pick up points of the 54 left?
So 2 riders out front. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's such a... Hannah, I'm still so inexperienced, I guess, with Zwift, but it's not just... I don't think there is the right answer, is there? The right answer will be what happens out on the road. We can probably answer this perfectly once we've run this with this combination of teams. Then on another day with a different combination of teams and riders, it would be different again. Right.
Yeah, quite.
Now these guys are trying to get clear before they get to the finish line. They'll pick up their aero power up, this time through the line, and then of course they've got that long run westward right the way through the middle of Richmond to get out to the next sprint point, which is on Monument Street. There's quite a long way to go, and here comes Andreasen. This is interesting. The world champion's just riding through this little group of attackers here. Here he comes.
This is really interesting. This is really interesting, Jez, because you've got Andreasen, who is trying to go clear in that rainbow jersey. There's Zach Nair of Next Esports Power by Insured. There's Vidar Mel, the Norwegian for Movistar, trying to go away. And now we're starting to see riders try and break things up, try and take and form a small group to go away. This is interesting. Yeah. They go across the line, they pick up a new aero power-up, and now we're on to lap 2.
Paradane's choosing to use it there already. I don't know whether that was intentional. We've also got the bronze medalist from the esports world leading, Mark Mading, the German rider, right on the front there, riding for Beast Mode. First time we've mentioned that team so far. So, next sprint point they get to will be at the far western end of the course. They'll have gone around the monument turn, turned back on themselves. It's not for a while just yet, so they probably need to calm down a little bit, but by the look of that pack, there's not much calming down going on. Look at the numbers in there. There's a lot of 5s and 6s rocking up. Andreasen's going off the front as well. This is not what I'd have expected to see, Hannah, at this stage. That this next sprint point, there are, what have we got, 4, 3, 2 and 1 point. So you can only score, if you win it, as many as you would have done on the first lap.
I think as well they're wanting to try and make this very intense for those who might already be struggling, and to try and string things out and put yourself and your team in a strong position and try and get rid of some of those other riders who are left in the peloton right now, and to try and eliminate other teams from scoring those big points. And if you have a plan to try and take many of your riders forward in this first select group, then you're going to score big points, aren't you?
We're getting the data there on Bjorn Andreasen, our world champion. 88 RPM. Hannah, just a quick one on RPM, by the way. I've noticed quite a lot of regular, and particularly the elite Zwifters, pushing quite big gears and quite a low cadence when they're really up to racing speed. And is that something you've noticed, or is it something you do when you're racing?
I think for the riders here, it's quite like what we'll see IRL in real life on the road. It's each rider has their own style of racing and the way in which they like to pedal, and it might not just be when they're at home racing on Zwift, but also outside racing or riding on the road too. So I think it just depends on the characteristic and how a rider likes to race, with a low cadence or a high cadence.
Right, so all still together. Should we check in Nathan Guerrero? I can see him having a drink. Let's see if we can bring in Nathan. No, he's not ready for this. But we'll have a look at him in a little while anyway. He's definitely waved to the camera saying, no, do not come to me. Go on, Nathan, dig in. We're completely impartial here, but we've got a little window on Nathan's world. There he is, right in the middle of the pack, and there he is, bottom left of the screen. He's not going to talk to us, understandably. because he's knocking on some serious watts right now, but he is our man in the pack, Nathan Guerrera. Those of you who watched the Zwift Grand Prix last year will know he was commentating on it too. This year, he's doing what he absolutely loves and racing right in the middle of that pack. Look at that perfect positioning, Hannah, for Nathan.
It is perfect.
Right
it is perfect. It is perfect. And for Nathan, he's one of the experienced riders within this bunch here, and he can give so much knowledge to his team of Team Castelli powered by Elite. And we've already seen Ricardo Panizza, who has been trying to get away, as we see Pim van Diemen, the Dutchman of Movistar, try his luck. He's being chased down. It's Milor again of Hexagon. This is interesting.
Yep, the two teams who were 6th and 8th last year in the Zwift Grand Prix. Milor just covering that move and sitting in behind Van Diemen. Very deliberately as well, not coming past him. And actually, that's a skill in itself in Zwift, isn't it, Hannah? Getting up to a rider, not going past them, just backing off a little bit in order to get into their slipstream and wait there. They've got company too. Looks like Ava Synergy again. This is that long rollout. This might be where we see some of these riders using their aero power-ups. Not many seem to have used them. I haven't noticed many using them so far, Hannah.
I think what we've seen is riders are saving those power-ups and they're using them at the vital times. So we didn't see riders perhaps using them earlier on in the race on lap 1, but they certainly used them going over the top of Libby Hill on that descent into 23rd Street. And so for these riders, you only get 1 power-up per lap. And so you've got to be very wise at when you want to try and use it. And you can just see there one of the riders from Aber Synergy, one of the Belgian riders, using it in order to try and attack and get away from the peloton. Here he is. Look at this from Paradanes.
Yeah, he's gone again because he covered that last move, didn't he? He's gone hard over the top, 10.5 watts per kilogram from the American, but he's still got company. Talbot as well, the American just in second place, the Saris rider, had gone clear. He'd made a big effort to be out there in the first place, but Paradanes has gone right over the top of him. Those two are clear, and he's got it. By the time he gets to the line, he should have this if he can hang on to this. Look at the numbers that are being pushed. It's the first time I've seen a 12 on there from a rider in the lead. 12 watts per kilogram, and he's got it. So that's 4, 3, 2, and 1 point's gone there for those riders. We should be able to bring you that. We should be able to bring it. Paradane's getting the 4 for Abus.
Good points there.
Frantically writing these things down. That is going to get more and more difficult to stay on top of as well. But those riders now, of course, scoring but eliminated at the same time. Losing riders all the time. So after that sprint point, we are now down to 72 of the 80 who started, and the drop-off starts getting greater and greater as things go by. We must note, Hannah, there's riders in here now who've made moves and attacks. The likes of Mading has been in there. We've seen Morrissey have a go off the front as well, who are now in this pack and have already spent some matches without getting any points just yet. But it makes sense that the teams themselves want to make it hard for the others and see who they can shake out.
They do, but there's only so many matches you've got. If you think, Jez, you start with a sugar cube, and every time that you make an effort, you're chipping away at that sugar cube, and once you use all of that sugar cube, you've got nothing left in the tank, and so you've got to be very wise as to where you use that sugar cube. As we see in Vidamel, he's another rider from Movistar who has made several efforts so far. At the moment, if he can try and force a little group to come away, as you see the Frenchman Viord trying to bridge across here. This could be interesting if they can try and work together.
This is heading towards the Broad Street sprint. Long straight run into this sweeping left-hander. And those two are together. Let's see if they can press on together, because the gap was tiny. We're being told, look at that, 1.6 seconds, if that. But Movistar have done this 2 or 3 times so far, and I'm just looking to see how many points they've scored so far. I could do with our points table coming up one more time, maybe, just to see where Movistar are. But this is quite a big hit out, but they're drawing other riders off the front too. Let's look at those watts per kilo. There's 4 riders there, all knocking on 6 watts per kilo or thereabouts. That gives you an indication. Movistar with 2 riders up front now, Hannah.
But this is interesting now, because if Pim van Diemen and Vidar Mel can try and score in this next sprint, that's when we get to Broad Street. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 points. 5 riders eliminated this next time. And so if they can get 2 riders to score at 1 sprint, they'll put themselves right up there and they'll elevate themselves in that leaderboard.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going slightly downhill at this point, and there's a big attack coming over the top of them as well. Just when you think it was backing off a little bit, of course, any backing off is just another opportunity for someone to have a big dig at the front too. This is Polly of the Toyota team, Toyota Elite team, Jack Polly, the Kiwi. He's got a bit of a bigger gap this time, and it's not long after this turn to the arch either. Under 10k to go now in this race.
Look from that angle just how strung out the peloton is, Jez, and how far back. If you're so far back, it's going to be incredibly difficult to try and move yourself back through, and it's going to take an awful lot of energy just to try and get back to the front. Even if you don't make this next sprint with the first 5, you're going to use and burn so many of those matches that you crucially need.
Yeah, absolutely. Mel has chosen to use his aero power up there. He gets his 15 seconds of being that little bit, 25% more aero. Still the 2 Movistar riders in play. You're right here. This has got to be their game. Very deliberate game plan. But they're not going to have it all their own way by the looks of it either. The Hexagon rider here, Havot, Sebastian Havot, the Frenchman, is really going for it now, laying it down to get to the point first. It looks like he's going to survive and get the 5 points there as well, Havot. Where is that line? He sits up again and then just digs in again. 14 watts per kilogram now from Havot. He is absolutely going for this. Yes, he's got it. So he gets the 5. The 4 will go to Berry. And there's go 3, 2, and 1. Right at the front of that now much reduced pack as well. So Havot getting the 5 points.
Scored there. 6 points scored there by Movistar between Mel and Van Diemen.
So it did work in the end, not quite maybe first and second, but 6 points will do very nicely. Bearing in mind that in that finishing sprint, the final time towards the finish line, there are 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, obviously. So there might still be some teams. There'll be some, Hannah, actually I say that, Hannah, will there be some riders in this pack whose goal is to wait for that final sprint? You know,
I think there will be. I think there will be, and there is going to be riders, I think, who have said, we're going to lay it all on the line, we're going to try and take a big risk, but we want to try and score those big points. And if we can get one of our riders to score the 7 points or the 8 points at that finish line, it's goal done. If they don't achieve that, then of course they'll come away and really reassess how could they do better for next week. As we see an update, there's Aber Synergy on 8 points. 13 on 7. Movistar moved themselves up. They're now 3rd with 7 points. Next Esports powered by Insured on 6. Hexagon put themselves on that leaderboard, courtesy of Havot with 5. Swedish Swifters on 4 with Saris on 3. Toyota Elite on the 2, and still yet to score. Beast Mode powered by Rose. Coalition Alpha, Deepak, Fudra, Primor, Restart, Castelli, and Wahoo Cole. Now, Coalition Alpha.
Wow.
They're one of the strong teams, Jez, but this... Are they leaving it with a lot of work to do? Are they taking a big risk and a big gamble here?
It looks like it at the moment. They're our defending champions, Coalition Alpha. They've got this funky new kit this year as well. They've got a really strong team, but not just not taking points, but not really getting involved much so far. We've barely mentioned them, have we? That is very interesting. Is it all about to turn around in these next, well, 3 sprint points? We have 3 sprint points left now. The KOM point at the top of Libby Hill, and then the 23rd Street sprint, and then the finish line as well. So they go 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. To do all the reverse counting in one go. Hey, Hannah, one of the things we need to remember is that final sprint will be contested by, even if they're off the back, we'll include them in this count, 54 riders, which means that of the whole, let's say, 45 minutes of racing or something, 46 riders will probably finish this race and not score a single point. How demoralising is that for them and their team? Because it literally, they may have ridden their heart out. Someone will be in this pack and not score. They've ridden their heart out and they've actually contributed 0 to their team. That's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, It is very, very tough, but this is top-level racing here that we're seeing, and we're seeing the best riders, the best teams come into this Grand Prix, and it all comes down to the tactic, the strategy, the level that they're racing at, and this is such a high level, and so each move, each effort, each time you burn a match, it is all going to accumulate to something, and for some, it's going to pay off, and for others, they're going to walk away empty-handed.
Well, that was Kaminski, Michał Kaminski, the Polish rider for Coalition Alpha. Almost as if he's listening in to Hannah and I here in that lovely new Coalition Alpha kit. Last year's winners, the defending champions, going to the front, getting a little bit of a gap, Kaminski, and backing off. I think what we might be seeing here, Hannah, a little bit, is the riders knowing and having learnt, if they didn't know already, just how hard that climb of Libby Hill is, because this is the long, sort of slightly undulating downhill that takes them to that cobbled climb, and it's all about the weighting and the positioning right now.
It is, and I think you mentioned the fact that we haven't mentioned or talked about Coalition Alpha so much. I think how we can relate to the way that they've been riding so far and the fact that they've been so anonymous is almost like a sprinter. During a race, let's say in the Tour de France, you won't necessarily talk about a sprinter until the final 200, 300 meters of the race, because they've been able to keep themselves so well hidden for the whole stage. And now Coalition Alpha are showing their colours, and they've been protecting themselves, but also saving as much energy as possible. Yeah,
this is Lionel Vujasin, the Belgian rider for Coalition Alpha, just off the front. And maybe this has been the game plan, to give away a few points early on, lose a few riders as they take up those points, and then come in for the big points late on. Let's hope it works for them, the defending champions, because it's a, well, we'll only know afterwards if it's a risky tactic, won't we? Vujasin has got a little lead here, not big by any means. Looking for the other Coalition Alpha jerseys in that top 10, top 12 of riders on the right-hand side of the screen. He's the only one at the moment, but it's an ever-shifting and evolving peloton, that one.
It is, but this is an interesting move. You've got Next Esports and Coalition Alpha, who have formed a duo here with Lionel Vujasin and Brad Duffy Jr. They've opened up a gap 3 seconds, and it's heading northwards.
Yes, it is. Duffy Jr. there, just tagging on to the back of Vujasin. This is a very strong pairing between these two. Two very strong teams, of course. Next Esports, of course, were 4th last year. Looking to build on that here. This is a useful one. At the top of this KOM, if they survive to the top of the cobbled climb of Libby Hill, it'll be 6 and 5 points for those two. But look at that gap visually. That's a tiny pack, Hannah, isn't it? I know I keep talking about there being 67 riders heading into this. That's not 67 riders there. No way. We've definitely got groups off the back of this as well.
This has been an intense race. It has been intense, and there's been very, very little time for any rest, recovery, to try and sit in the wheels. You can see just how hard Lionel Vujasin is making this for Brian Duffy Jr. That little acceleration in power, he was losing the wheel a little bit, and now we see Abus Synergy with Van Elst try to go off the front here and to try and take the 3rd place here. But Kjell Power, look at this from Kjell Power.
Wow, is this the perfect timing? They know how tough this climb of Libby Hill is. Oh, they're both dropping the aeros. Even on the climb, dropping the aero power up as well. Vujasin there. Vujasin looking like he's just going to miss out here. Or is he? Oh, Duffy. I think it was Duffy there coming through to take the fight. There's 6, I should say. And yeah, Vujasin there taking 5. 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. We will confirm that for you. There it is on the left. Wow. That was in the end a very fruitful 2-up pairing there, but it was close because Kjell Power from Movistar was coming all the time, wasn't he, Anna?
He was coming with a lot of speed and power. It's just a little bit too late, but take a look at that. 6 riders, 6 different teams, all scoring. Now there's only 900 meters until we'll get to that final point of eliminations. That's on 23rd Street. That's where Peter Sagan made his attack back in 2015 to go on and win his first road race world title. We're here now in the virtual world, and Nichols has decided for the team of BL13 level Velo that he wants to try and go for this one. He wants to try and take the 7 points that are on offer.
He's very close, Andy Nichols, the British rider for BL13, the new team on the block who've been really active so far, taking the first points of the day today through Joel Lewis. Andy Nichols, let's look at his numbers. 9 watts per kilo right now, sitting on that up this rise as well. I think he's going to hang on. He's very close to it as well. We can see, the chase is coming behind from Milor, I should say. The hexagon rider. Is he going to catch him though, Hannah? It's so close up to this point. Nichols just hanging on, but look at the charge coming from behind. It's Mark Mading again, working his way through. Mading's left it, or has he? Mading's just left it too late. Nichols there, getting the 7. It's 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. And we've only got the finish to come, Hannah. How's this happened? We've absolutely ripped through this race.
We certainly have. And look again, it's that team of BL13 who've got 2 riders scoring of those 7. So they've scored amongst that there 11 points to their tally. Bjorn Andreasen is still there, the world champion.
Well, this is it. This is the final sprint for the finish line. It's downhill to this point and then a gradual kick up to the line itself. All in, these are the last 54 riders, or I think it's actually probably more like 25 to 30 riders who are still in contention here, Hannah, and it's going to be so close. There are 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 and 2 and 1. We'll have a look at the team points in just a moment to see how close they are, but this final sprint is going to be really important. Bjorn Andreasen right on the back of what we now have, a little bit of a breakaway. They've only got a couple of seconds over the rest of them, though.
They do, but take a look at this, because Frieger, he's made his way into this select group, still chasing behind several riders. But this is really interesting because you've got Michal Kaminski, who is here, the Polish rider. There's Bjorn Andreasen, Lennart Turgels, who's just come off the back of the Tour of Turkey, brings some good form into tonight's race. He's got the strength. Now it's all about saving something for the sprint that's going to come.
Here we go. It's fascinating the way, just thinking about the contrast between riding the Tour of Turkey, Hannah, and then suddenly doing this crazy hard 45-minute race. It's totally different kind of effort, isn't it, as well? Big attack coming from one of the Americans here up the outside as well for Next Esports.
Zach Nair is trying to take a flyer. He wasn't initially in that group, so he's worked hard to try and get past. And crucially, he's trying to carry all of that speed, that momentum, to try and go past into this final kilometre here. Now this is going to be a real grind into the finish line. Can Nair hold on? It's going to be tight, because now Kaminski of Coalition Alpha comes up to the back wheel, and it's suffering. It's whatever you've got left in the tank now.
Let's see how much things can change in this final sprint. They've got about 650 metres left to go. Kaminski of Coalition Alpha, the defending champions from last year, clear by himself, but the chasing pack is absolutely disintegrating. I'm watching a picture, as you are, Hannah, of Nathan Guerrera, who is all over his machine, where he's desperately trying to stay in contact with that pack, keeping himself in there as well. This is incredibly hard work up to the line. He's dropping his aero as well, Kaminski. He gets that boost of 15 seconds. He can see the line. There is the line right up the road in front of him.
It's coming. He's got 1 second advantage over Lennart Turgels. It's a slender advantage, but what they can't afford to do behind is to sit, watch, and look at each other, because there's points, and crucial points, that are on offer at this finish line. Now is the time, and there is Bjorn Andreasen. The world champion drops the aero power up.
Can Kaminski hang on? I think he might just do it, but it's going to be so close on the line. For Coalition Alpha, the defending champions, Kaminski right there. Just watch behind him, because Andreasen is coming. Here he is, the world champion, and he takes it. The 8 right on the line. This is a team race, but we've had an individual piece of brilliance there from the current UCI World Esports World Champion. Bjorn Andreasen takes the final sprint, and it goes 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Just a couple more points to go. We've not had that many riders across the line just yet. Going into this final sprint, it was BL13, the new team on the block, who were leading. What has that final sprint done to it? There's Bjorn Andreasen with the win over Kaminski of Coalition. Plantreau in 3rd, Lennart Turgels, the 2 Abus riders, 4th and 5th, 1 Movistar rider in 6th, and then Freyet and Nair closing things out for Next Esports there at the bottom. My gosh. Bring on the team result, Hannah, because that's going to really mix things up. No one scoring there for BL13, and they were in the lead going into that final sprint on the 2nd lap. What a race!
That was sensational. And you and I spoke about Bjorn Andreasen, that he he didn't race the way that he did to win that UCI Esports World title and the Rainbow Stripes. He was very conservative of where he used his effort. And when you see how disintegrated the peloton was after Libby Hill and then into 23rd Street, Jez, this has been one of the most demanding races, and especially for an opener, that we've seen in a long time.
Absolutely horrible. I'm watching Nathan Guerrero going through that. I don't know about you, Hannah, but I'm watching, and as I say, my Zwift racing is fairly limited. Whenever I've done it, it's always been horribly hard. Nice and easy at first, but then I immediately leveled up, and it's like, oh no, this is really getting nasty. But watching Nathan, that looked horrific. There was no easing up in there. The level's just so high. The watts per kilo being put out throughout that, and it'll be no different with our women's race, is going to be, gosh, nasty. You can just see that the women's race, of course, is due to start in 9.5 minutes, which means that all 80 of our elite women are well into their warm-ups right now, readying themselves for their race, which is going to be exactly the same distance, the same format, and the same points. Also 16 teams, almost entirely matching. 13 of the 16 teams have parity between their men's and women's teams in terms of what they put out. But I guess, Hannah, what we now need to ask before we do get that ratified, and well, it'll probably be provisional at first, but our team standings, what have we learnt from that, other than the fact that it's excruciatingly hard? What can we pick out? If we could get in the ears of any of those women. Oh, hello, hang on a minute. Well, we'll come back to that, shall we? Wow. It was important, that final sprint, wasn't it? Look at that. Aber Synergy, 19 points, the 1 point lead over Next Esports, presented by Ensured. And then BL13 dropping two places to finish in third on the day. Here starts for those men their 7-round Zwift Grand Prix, and what a banger of an opening. Absolutely brilliant. Let's see who didn't score. I know it's cruel, it's very cruel. Deepak, Foudre and Primor, along with Castelli Elite, no points scored, and they'll be racking back over what happened in there to try and figure it out, because we're repeating the points hunter, don't forget, for the 7th and final round of the Zwift Grand Prix. That is going to be crucial. What have you spotted in there, Hannah? Who's done particularly well, and who can we be a bit harsh on, maybe?
Well, I have to say that Evo Synergy, the way that they timed the final 2 points in which to score big was crucial to their win this evening. And if you think back to how many times did we see Jasper Paradines, the Belgian, go on the attack and try and force moves, and still it all played out for the all-Belgian squad. So sensational from Aber Synergy. I'm particularly pleased and I'm particularly impressed by BL13, powered by Level Velo, because that squad is a new squad here in the Zwift Grand Prix, and they came in, they were the first rider, the first team to make an attack. They were leading all the way into that finale, and still finishing with a podium spot in third, level on point with Next Esports powered by Ensured, who, Jez, they're an incredibly experienced Zwift team. And I said earlier on, arguably on paper, Next are the strongest squad here in tonight's Grand Prix, and BL13 gave them a good run for the money.
Absolutely. What an exciting men's opening round. You're listening to the opening round of the Zwift Grand Prix with me, Jez Cox, and Hannah Walker, and we are just about to bring you the women's race, which, as you can see, starts in 6 minutes and 47 seconds exactly. Let's get on with those women's teams, shall we, and introduce them to you. We have 16 teams, just as we did with the men, and they start with, on this first page, the defending champions, Aeonium. We'll come back to them. First of all, Aber Synergy in a different kit to their men's team. Well, they're joining up for the first time as a women's team after their men's team was third last year, so high standards set there as well. Aeonian, our defending champions, looking to defend that and see if they can double up as well. They've got some serious talent in there. Ariel Verheeren, of course, 5th in those UCI Esports Worlds this year. And they have Vicky Whitelaw, who's a fascinating rider that's had a long career as a road professional and now plies her trade, hurting herself indoors for our pleasure this evening as well. Beast Mode were 9th last year. The all-German team should have no problem communicating with each other, of course, because they all speak the same language, which always helps, I think, when you're trying to knit together team unity. And then BL13, the women's version, in the pink kit. And, well, we'll see how they get on.
They must be motivated by what they've just seen of their male counterpart team. Absolutely.
So. Well, or it's pressure. Maybe it's just pressure.
Coalition, 10th last year, they're back once again. Lou Bates and Alice Lethbridge leading that team. Two incredibly strong, experienced riders. Really suit this style of racing, but also this type of course. Hexagon is a new team here to the Zwift Grand Prix. They're made up of 4 French riders, 1 Canadian, led by the 4th place at the UCI Esports World Championships, Cedrine Etienne. Movistar, led by Anna Delana, their sports director, who has just led their men's team to a great result. Now she'll be hoping to try and lead the women's team, led by Mika Sunderstrom, who was 6th at the Esports World Championships. They were 4th last year. They'll be aiming for the podium this year. And next, they're a new squad here in the Grand Prix. They've got Liz van Hurling, who was 8th at the Esports World Championships. A rider who's moved from Saris, but she loves these intense races, the fast races here, Jez.
Right, we'll see how she gets on. Next up, Primor RWB, another new team racing in the green under their sports director, Sean Gallagher. A nice mix of different nations in that team too. Rocacorba Collective were 11th last year. And disappointed with it from what I heard, so looking to move up, having learnt from that experience with the new formats coming in this year. Another very multinational team, the Rocacorba Collective, spread all over the place. Next up, Saris No Pins, looking to build on their 6th place finish last year. They have, they're adding a men's team this year too, because last year it was just the women's team. Now they have a men's team too. They have a veteran rider in there, Jen Real, who has just ridden, I noticed this week, just a few weeks ago, her 500th Zwift race. Now, for a lot of the really hardcore Zwifters, that sounds like nothing, but when you put it into collective, that's an awful lot of time spent racing on Zwift, and she obviously loves it. Also alongside them, Team Castelli have a women's team added alongside their men's team. The men were 7th last year. The women looking to get things going this year. Interesting rider in there, by the way, the only Slovenian in the field, Martina Erjavec, who has been Slovenian 3 road race and hill climb champion. So let's see what she can bring to the Zwift racing format at the elite level.
Moving on to Team Swedish Swifters. They finished 7th overall last year, an all-Swedish team led by Marlene Bjarhed, an incredibly experienced Zwift rider, but she's also joined by Nelly Larsen, who's the national cross-country marathon champion of her nation. Toyota Elite, they were 8th last year. They've got Charlotte Colclough, who combines racing on the road and in esports. She's also got the climber Natalie Stevenson alongside her within that 5-rider roster. Wahoo Nicole, led by Adam Thorpe. They've got Lizzie Brooke, who she's a strong rider here, Jez. She's a great time trialist. She'll be crucial to that squad trying to score points tonight. Then we head to Team 2024, their sports director Josh Lipka. He's got a great squad made up of 4 riders from the USA, 1 rider from Canada, Crystal Konchinsky. She is arguably one of the best esports riders. She's been up there in plenty of the Zwift races over the seasons. She's been riding a lot of hill climbs at the moment, so she's well prepared for this Grand Prix.
Well, there we go. That team as well, of course, are sponsored by Virginia's Blue Ridge, which is effectively the tourism arm of Virginia, where this race is set. So let's say there might be a little bit of pressure on them because today's course is Richmond, Virginia, USA. We've got a little bit of time. Why don't we have a look at the course one more time and just remind people how it works. On that first lap, only the first 4 riders through each of those sprint points scores a point, and in that occasion it is 4 points. They get the aero power up both times, and then on that second lap is when the points really start racking up. And we saw, I guess, going kind of to form, the highest rated, the big guns, if you like, really coming out on that second lap, Hannah, having sat in. Should we expect to see similar with the women? What do you reckon?
I think we should, but I'm really interested and I'm really curious to see how they race this one. Have they changed their plan or strategy, having seen how the men raced? Or have they kept to their plan of attack that they've spoken about this week in order to come into this first round of the Grand Prix and stick to their guns?
It's interesting, isn't it? I just wonder whether there are any of the... Well, I wonder whether... I bet there were. Some of those 80 women might not have wanted to watch that. I suspect most did, but some might not have wanted to, Hannah. You know, everyone's got their own different run into these things. I wonder if we might just be able to grab a very quick word with Nathan Guerrero. I can see him on his phone. Nathan, can you hear us? He's actually jumped off his bike. I think he's not lying.
Can you hear me okay?
Nathan, can you hear us? Yes, mate. Very well done.
I have you.
Hey, that looks absolutely
well, you know, horrific. No excuses, but my chain dropped on that sprint with. I gave it all on 23rd, and the chain popped off. I tried a small ring. It was my fault 100%. I feel good that I was just in it though. Those guys are amazing, and we'll be back next week for sure. Team Italy, Team Castelli all the way. But that was tons of fun. Real excited for next week.
Cool. Nathan, have you got anything you could pass on to the women? Any word of advice other than hang in there and lay down the watts? Was there anywhere on the course where you found actually you could get back in and...
Yeah, I would say coming through on the top of Governor Street through the lap, you can get back on if you're just there. Use the draft, be smart, back of the pack. You can stay there as long as there's no gaps going.
Fantastic.
But got to be in good position.
Nathan, thank you so much. Grab a drink, won't you? We're going to get back to the women's race because it has started already. They've rolled out and they're ready to get to that finish line, pick up their first power-up, which is the aero power-up, just as with the men. And we're going to be off picking out Kristin Kulczynski there of that Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024 team. As mentioned, there's the finish line. Going through there the first time. This will be where we pick up the power-ups. Unless I've missed it, that is the point at which, there we go. And none of the riders choosing to use it just yet. I don't know, Hannah, what you think. I'm trying to look to see just how useful those power-ups were when they were used. It's always tricky to tell, unless you're actually in the race. They'll be feeling it, won't they, when they see the speed go up as well. But it's tricky. Most of the riders tending to use them in the same place. And I wonder whether the women will be influenced by what they saw of the men using them.
I think as well, especially because there's only one power-up available, and so you've got this level playing field for all riders, all teams here, with one power-up. Having this aero power-up, Jez, is you want to use it in the optimum place. You want to use it either on a flat piece of road, perhaps a downhill section to try and give yourself as much recovery as possible, because it's only 15 seconds, and so it's not... You have to use it to its optimum and make sure you get the best out of it, and you're only getting one per lap.
Aber Synergy, we've got to remember they're in a different kit to the men's team. They have the light blue tops to their jerseys. They've pushed right up as well, just drifting back in again now. This is a slightly more measured and calm start, isn't it? A little bit more caution. Don't forget, folks at home, on this first lap, it's only the first rider across. If you've just been watching the end of the men's race, that second lap, it goes crazy, and it'll be exactly the same thing with the women's race as well. But on this first lap, it's only that first rider who scores those first points, and they're immediately eliminated. Let me remind everyone of that. They are immediately eliminated. Lots of riders getting ride-ons, which is nice to see, dropping down on them from above. If you're not used to watching Zwift racing, that is coming all the way through everyone that's watching and doing it through the Zwift app as well. So all packed in there together. No one choosing to attack just yet, and they're heading towards Monument Avenue, the first of those sprints where 4 points will be available. Attack coming though, by the looks of it. And once again, it's two riders from the same team. Wahoo Lacol this time. That is three Wahoo Lacol riders there by the looks of it, Hannah, on the move.
Even
at the front.
Four. There's one more who's just come across, and so this is interesting from Wahoo Lacol, because they're wanting to try and set things alight from the very beginning here, Jez, and they're wanting to make this intense and attritional for all of those other riders. And if you can try and put other riders under pressure and put them into great difficulty early on, it means that they're going to have a hard time of getting themselves back into the peloton. And we know that there's only going to be one rider who scores at this first intermediate sprint that we get to on Monument Street. There's only going to be 4 points available and one rider to score, and then they'll be eliminated. But this is very interesting, because now we've seen Hexagon with Mortas, the French woman, who has got a gap of just less than a second to Natalie Stevenson, the Scottish rider.
Yeah, Stevenson just working her way up to the back wheel there as well, right in that draft. And Mottas has been out there about a minute or so by herself. And Mottas is not hanging around. Christian Kulczynski coming across as well. So maybe she fancies those opening 4 points. Let's not forget, with 3 riders clear, anyone who's burning more matches here than they need to is going to have to recover from this. But I think, once again, Hannah, we're seeing what you said earlier about teams wanting to make the start hard and whittle down that pack a little bit more to put some of these teams' riders just completely out of contention.
Well, look at this camera angle. We see that the peloton is relatively strung out, but we've already got riders who are and have been dispatched from the peloton. And so it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get themselves back into the race. And this is where it plays into the favour of those teams who, first of all, have got strength in numbers, Jez, but also have the strength and power to go on like this for a long period of time. And Wahoo Lacole have just that. They've got Lizzie Brooke within their squad, who she's an exceptional triathlete. She's a great time trialist, and she can meet the demands of the intensity here.
Yeah, this Wahoo Lacole team is the team who finished second last year and have come back with a game plan that we're not yet to understand, but we will understand it as time goes by. Kristen Kaczynski just drifting, by the looks of it, back into the pack, but she'd marked that move for Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024. She won't want to be laying down any more watts than necessary at this point, because let's remember, only one rider can score at each of these points. That's the monument. We can see the monument right in front of us, which means that Monument Avenue is what we're now turning onto, and we are approaching the first of those banners. And this is where we see the aero power-ups being thrown down by quite a lot of these riders too. Patterson going for it. She's made a big effort. I don't know if she's going to hang on here, though, by the looks of it. No, she's been overtaken as well. That's Ava Synergy now in the lead.
The Canadian Penner is overtaken it, but here comes Ehrlich. This is going to be 3 to the line.
Wow. Only one of them will score any points, though, and it's being given to Ehrlich. Wow. Well, we'll just wait to have that completely confirmed, but it looks like Ehrlich is being given that. The American rider for Abus Synergy.
This is what we were talking about earlier on, Jez, where you've got to decide where you want to make and use your effort here, because you've had 4 riders sprinting it out. Only one rider has got the points and is now being eliminated, and 3 of the riders have expended a lot of energy. They've gone deep into their reserves, and now they've got to try and recover and meet the counterattacks that are now going to come from Stevenson, Bassoni, here Conyers, who is trying to go up the road.
Right, so Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024 leading on 4 points. I'm just going to check that's, Emily Ehrlich, the American rider, taking those 4 points. So she is out. That leaves us with 79 riders. And Caitlin Conyers is the next of those to try her hand going towards the next sprint. It's not quite such a big gap to Broad Street. Broad Street almost back in the middle of our course, going along the southern edge of this Richmond, Virginia course, tracking along the edge of the James River, going eastward, southeastward. Who's leading at the front of that pack? Who's going to want to try and chase her down? The 2 laps are so radically different. The fact there is only ever 1 point on this first lap at each of these sprint points means that no one wants to burn matches, whereas on that second lap, they're much more happy to really throw it down. That's what we saw with the men, wasn't it? It was just a smash fest, that second lap. There was a bit of caution on the first lap and absolutely none of it on that second lap, was there, Hannah?
Quite right, Jez. There has to be some level of caution, because if you use so much energy and power on this first lap for very little reward, per se, you've got only 4 intermediate sprints. There's only going to be 4 riders who can score and then will ultimately be eliminated. You've got to make a decision. Do you try and save as much as possible on this first lap and then go all in for that second lap, where you've got a greater chance? As we just saw on the Monument Avenue, you had 4 riders sprinting it out. On the next time round, they would have all scored points and they would have all been eliminated. And so you've got to make that decision. And I'm really curious and interested to see, how will Movistar team play it, for example? Because they've got the same sports director in Anna Delana, who has guided their men's team. She's now guiding their women's team. What has she taken from that men's race to try and direct their women's team here? What has she learnt from that first race tonight in the Grand Prix? and what's she going to try and guide the 5 riders to in this race here.
Yeah, absolutely. 4th last year, that Movistar team in the women's category. And, well, we're watching Caitlin Conyers looking now even more likely to get to that Monument sprint point. Sorry, not the Monument sprint point, the Broad Street sprint point, the second one on this opening lap of 2, round 1 of the Zwift Grand Prix. Caitlin Conyers is sitting just below 5 watts per kilo pretty consistently. It's ever so slightly downhill here into the middle part of the course as well, coming right back into Broad Street in the centre of Richmond in Virginia. And she looks good right now.
She's got Lucy Harris, who is trying to chase and trying to bridge across here. Conyers, this is going to be tight because she'll get to, it's only 700 meters to get to the next banner, that next arch on Broad Street. Harris is overtaken here for Toyota Elite, and this is looking promising for the British rider. Conyers is looking to be fading at the moment, and she's losing considerable time.
Wow, this is a great ride by Harris. Yeah, Conyers may have just gone a little bit too deep. Look at the numbers for Harris as well. She's knocking on 7 watts per kilo and she's approaching that banner. She's going to get this as well. So Harris comes towards the line. She is going to get the 4 points. No one else really matters now. So in a way, Conyers needs to sit up, doesn't she?
She does, but equally, as we see that Conyers has left off the gas at the moment. Cass, the South African rider from Rokukorba, is trying to go long. She's trying to go for Libby Hill here and to try and hold off at the moment. But as opposed to Monument Avenue, where we had almost a blanket finish for 4 riders, that was a runaway for Harris.
Yeah, absolutely. The Toyota Elite rider scoring the 4 points there. For the first 4 points taken by Virginia's Blue Ridge, second 4 points taken by Harris and Toyota Elite. This is a long hit out by Cass, though, isn't it, Hannah? Because as we know, this is the longest gap now between that point and that climb of Libby Hill. It's an awfully long way to go.
She's got almost 5 kilometers to go until they get to Libby Hill, so it's a big gamble. However, take a look at the lead. It's 13 seconds. As we just see on the right-hand side, that's come down considerably. Cass still is just a 1 second advantage here. So for me, Cass needs to sit up, get herself back into the peloton, try and save as much energy as possible, and where possible, try and get some respite now after that move, because it amounted to nothing, but she can have a good ride up to Libby Hill, and also the second lap, let's not forget, if she can try and save something now.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see if this just settles a little bit now, because they know what's coming as well. I may be wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong, actually, because I'd love to see some big attacks going down. But let's see. Let's see. And lots of ride-ons being given. Fans happy to see their chosen riders, friends and loved ones, family maybe, even in this big pack of riders, all bubbling away at the front. So we have 2 more of these sprints. Sorry, Hannah, go on.
I was going to say that I think that's the beauty of it, that the whole community who is watching now, they can fire up the Zwift Companion app. They can give these riders a ride-on. They can give them that support. You can just see the ride-ons all in the back pocket of the jerseys of each of these riders. But it's not just the racing that everyone can be a part of and involved in here on Zwift, because you can ride leisurely, you can use it for training if you want to target a particular event, or you can just ride with friends and make new friends, meet new friends. And whether they're racing or riding, same nationality, you can also ride with all of anyone around the world and around the globe, which I think is incredible. And I think when you take a look down at some of these teams, you've got 5 riders, 5 different nationalities. It just shows how you can ride internationally here.
Yeah, I hope you're at home, if you're not already a Zwifter, feeling encouraged to get involved. You don't need too much actually to get involved. Lots of people think you need lots of expensive kit. You don't really. You need a device such as a computer, and you need a mobile device as well, which can run either Android or iOS. And then you just need to be able to measure your speed, power, and cadence. You can do either of them with a smart trainer. But if you have a regular bike and a non-smart trainer, you can also connect to a speed or cadence sensor and hook all that up to it via the Bluetooth or the ANT Plus and get started. Check it all out at Zwift.com for full instructions about how to start your Zwift journey. I'm happy to tell you, Hannah, right? I'm happy to say this live on air. This year, I am unbeaten on Zwift. Now, not because I haven't raced on Zwift this year. Do you know what? I've done one Zwift race this year, and it was at the World Championships in Glasgow. I walked into the ruler party supported by Zwift, and immediately as I walked in, having just eaten, by the way, a burger, chips, and a small beer, Matt Stevens, our good friend, was there on the mic. He said, "Oh, here's Jez. Jez, get on the bike. Let's go." And I was put straight into a Zwift race with 2 or 3 other guys. Straight in. I'm pleased to say my number 1 aim was to hold the burger down. My number 2 aim was to win, and I achieved both.
Well done. 100% win rate there.
well happy with that. Very happy. No, it was great, and there was some new gamifications in that version as well, with bikes changing into a little kid's trike and all sorts of things that I hadn't seen before. So it's always good to see the platform evolving and new things happening. Right, talking of new things happening, it is about to kick off here, isn't it, Hannah? You can just tell they are now waiting for the base of that cobbled climb, and it is going to be thrown down royally on Libby Hill.
It certainly is, and you can almost cut the tension within this peloton now, Jez, because everybody is waiting. They're just preparing themselves. They're just moving themselves up, waiting and ready for the base of Libby Hill. And this climb, it's 600 meters long, but it's got some fierce kickers in it. 6% average gradient. Gallegos has decided she doesn't want to hang around anymore. The rider from Wahoo Col has decided she wants to go for a long one, and Lou Bates of Coalition Alpha and Paul, her teammate, have immediately sensed the danger here of this move of Gallegos.
That is interesting that both of those Coalition Alpha riders going after her. Again, remember, there are only one set of points, one set of 4 here, so sending 2 riders after to chase her they're either incredibly strong, which they are. We know how strong Lou Bates is, and Lou Bates is coming past her. This is an opportunity for Bates now. I wonder if we can just have a look at the team standings as they are right now going into this. Of course, the points have been spread around. Probably see it pop up on our screen a little bit, but the British rider Lou Bates for Coalition Alpha now leading by herself, and she has her teammate with her, Gotcha Paul, in 2nd place. So 2 up. Is this a clever thing to do at this stage? That's the interesting thing, Hannah. 1 set of points, 2 riders clear. What's going on here? This is
interesting, but let's not forget, once we go over Libby Hill, there's only 1.1 kilometres until 23rd Street. So if these 2 riders who are teammates in Bates and Paul can work here as a tandem almost and try and hold everybody off, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a tall ask because Gallegos is right on the coattails here. It's all being led behind by Charlotte Colclough, the British rider, and Kate Hill of Ionian, the winners of last year's Grand Prix. But Paul and Bates, they're great climbers. And Bates, let's not forget, she's a former national hill climb champion. They're about to round this right-hand corner, then they'll be onto the cobbles, and that's where we'll really start to see the gradients kick and bite. Look at that.
Yep, let's not forget. Only one of these 2 can score, though, but I suspect if Bates is to come in 2nd, she may well persist and keep going to that 23rd Street point, which, as we know, is not far on from the top of Libby Hill. This could be a really clever move by these 2. This is where it gets really steep into the right-hander on the cobbles. 2 riders from Coalition Alpha, the German rider Paul and the British rider Bates, clear. It's still looking good, although the chase, you can see from the numbers, is really coming from behind as well. I don't think it's going to be too much close before we see them coming up behind them, but no, Paul is going to hang on. So Coalition Alpha getting 1st and 2nd, but there was only 4 points available there anyway. And they go to Paul on Libby Hill. Now, Lou Bates, what's she going to do here, Hannah? Keep going? Does look like it,
She's got to keep going. She's got to keep going. This, I think, is all the game plan from Coalition Alpha here, to send 2 riders up the road to make sure that they can work in unison, help each other out and try and gain a lead. Bates, it's going to be a tall ask. It's coming down. 5 seconds is the deficit for the peloton behind, led by Maya. But let's not forget, she's only roughly, 600 meters from 23rd Street and that arch now. She'll get there with 18.9 kilometers remaining.
Yep, it does look like Lou Bates is going to do it, but we have seen some megawatts thrown down in this first lap already, so let's not count her chickens just yet. This is into the descent now as well, heading back in the direction of the finish line, really, to get to this next one as they encircle the edge of Union Hill. Quite a long descent to make the most of the climb they've just been taking in. As you mentioned, Hannah, Lou Bates, a former British hill climb champion. It is funny how, well, not funny maybe it's quite revealing how Zwift does seem to favour the strong climbers and hill climbers in particular.
It is, and the effort, I think, she loves these intense races, but coming up quick at the moment is Maya and Brooke. They've got these power-ups. This is going to be close.
It is going to be close. Bates. Can Lou Bates hang on? Where is it? We need the other shot from behind her. Did you see how close she is to the arch? She's made it. She's just gone through it, Lou Bates. My goodness me. That was either perfect measuring out of effort or it was mighty close. Lou Bates getting those last 4 points. So we now know who's going to be in the lead after the first lap. Coalition Alpha headed back towards the finish line now. And Coalition Alpha, having won the last 2 points there, they will have 8 points. Toyota Elite and... Virginia's Blue Ridge will be both on 4. Look at that. Coalition Alpha, everything going perfectly for them so far, but they've lost 2 very strong riders there, don't forget. Any rider who scores any points, even if it's just 1 on this second lap, they're immediately out of the race.
But what they've still got here, Jez, is 3 other strong riders within that squad of Nevin, Sheard and Lethbridge. And so they've come here with a game plan. They've achieved the first 2 targets, and now they're in a commanding position. Only 3 teams have scored so far. Yep. There's still 13 other teams who are on 0 points and have yet to try and get themselves on that scoreboard and try and work out a way in which to try and beat their opponents.
We're just seeing Gabriela Guerra there on the picture, which is a nice thing. I think Nathan has arranged that for us by the looks of it, and she is working hard, trying to keep herself as cool as she can. Cooling is, and there she is right in the middle of our pack there, riding for Saris, of course, Saris No Pins. Cooling is so critically important for these Zwift racers, Hannah, isn't it? And there's a lot of thought and energy that goes into the cooling element.
Massively, and it's so important in terms of your performance that you don't want to let your core body temperature start to overheat, Jez, and so riders will have a fan in front of them. They want to make sure that when they're doing their warm-up, which sounds contradictory, but you want to make sure that you're keeping your core body temperature as cool as possible, whilst also trying to, let's say, warm up your lungs, your heart, and sort of get the legs flowing.
Right, they're back into a climb now. This is the drag which takes them back towards the finish line itself, where they will pick up those aero power-ups for the second time. And you can see names there, a lot of the biggest names of the sport as well, bubbling up to the front for what we know is going to be a really crazy final lap. This is we started with the same number of riders as the men, but this is definitely an even more reduced main peloton now, isn't it, than we saw with the men's race, Hannah? I think this has been blown apart on that first lap.
It has, and that was mainly due to the fact that Wahoo Lacole wanted to try and get a good grip of the start of the race and make it difficult, and in doing so, even after the first couple of kilometers, we'd already lost riders, Jez, and so it's one thing talking about a tactical strategy. It's another thing talking about doing a tactical strategy when you're already suffering and haven't really now got the legs to try and make a difference.
Wonder if we can bring Nathan in here. Nathan, can you hear us? Just wondering if Nathan Guerrero can hear us. I can see him looking at his screen. We'll try and make contact with him and see if he can give us his take on the race so far. He is, of course, concentrating. Ooh, attack going before we even get to the finish line as well. And this is one of the Aeonians, Katie Hill, the British rider, using her aero to go clear as they approach the finish line as well. It's a long way to go this, Hannah, isn't it?
It is a long way, but for Katie Hill, she's used that aero power-up to perfection because she's used it in a location where you're on that flat road. She's used it to try and escape the peloton, which she's done successfully, and she's opened up a gap of 9 seconds. She goes through that start-finish arch. She'll gain another power-up to add to her back pocket to use on this second lap. And she'll get to the Monument Avenue with just over 12 kilometers remaining. So another 4 kilometers until she'll get there. It's a big risk, but 14 seconds and growing. This is a very smart move from the defending champion team, because she's got three teammates who are keeping themselves well within that top 10.
Hannah, we've seen a few of the riders there, including Katie Hill as well at the front, but also I noticed Sandrine Etienne there using her aero power up just before she came to the finish line there. And I'm right in saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that basically if you haven't used it in that lap, you get a new one, and you've just not used your first. You don't keep two, you only have one per lap. So I guess if we see anyone like Sandrine Etienne using it there, it's kind of, you'd have to say that's a mistake, wouldn't you? Because she could have used it somewhere on the course where it might have been more useful.
She could have, but it's also perhaps a place on that long straight stretch of road where you're sat in the pack, and she might not have wanted to use it in terms of an attack like we saw with Hill, but for Etienne, just to make things easier within the pack. She doesn't have to push as much power, she doesn't have to expend as much energy, and so there's very different ways of using it, and that was a great opportunity to see two riders using that aero power-up in two very different ways. As now we see Berglund with 7 seconds, 8 seconds of an advantage over Nevin, who leads the peloton and this bunch behind.
Yeah, so this Team Swedish Zwifter trying to get across that gap. Asa Berglund, a Swedish rider on the all-Swedish team, of course, as you'd expect with a team of that name. And there is that pack with so much firepower just yet to be unleashed, really. Berglund 14 seconds down, and this pack now being led by Nevin, 26 seconds down. Big lead by Hill. Katie Hill.
This is exceptional from Hill.
She's hung on to it well, hasn't she? I thought it might be too soon, but look at the power she's putting out. Even now, 5 watts per kilo.
It's the way in which, aside from the fact that she's been very linear with her effort here, it's the way in which she's been able to grow her advantage over the group behind, because they're also not hanging around. They're very cautious that the big points are now on offer on this lap 2, Jez. And so for Hill to continue to grow this time gap, now over the first time of the 2 Grand Prix that we've seen this evening, to see a gap grow so large at over 30 seconds, 33 seconds now.
Yeah, Asa Berglund adding the dual name of Fast Berglund, which is probably ideal. I wouldn't mind adding a fast to my name. As a racer, that's not a bad name to have added in. And she's looking good, although she's she's halfway between the peloton and Katie Hill, who continues to knock out that almost metronomic 5 watts per kilo, just sitting on that. This is obviously something that she's used to doing in training. These riders, and I guess Hannah, Zwift more than anything else, these riders will know their watts, and specifically their watts per kilo, and what that feels like, how long they can hold it for, probably better than anyone else, even in real world cycling. You know, Zwift is really where it's at in terms of nailing an understanding of what a certain wattage feels like, isn't it?
I think so, but I think also when you take a look at any race here, you can understand your physiology, you can understand what you are capable of putting out in terms of the power, but equally you can't control how any other team is going to race tonight. And so if you're racing to your power, but the race is already going up the road, you're not within the points. And so you've got to be very mindful in terms of that tactic and the tactic of other teams of making sure you're still within the race, but also not going and blowing yourselves up and going deep into the red.
Now here we are, still working our way towards that first sprint point. Katie Hill looking so good out front, riding for our defending champions Aeonian, but it's Coalition Alpha who lead in the team classification so far on the points from lap 1. Let's not forget, at this first sprint point, Katie Hill is just going for the same number of points as Lou Bates and the others were, 4 points. But now there is 4, 3, 2 and 1 available on the line, which is why we are seeing the Swedish rider, Asa Fast Berglund, still hanging on there. She's not a desperate hanging on this because she's going for those 3 points too, which will see her scoring and then being out of the race too. This is when things start to get real busy. Here. She does. Yeah, Katie Hill's around the Monument turn, which means she should soon be able to see the Monument sprint point, and she's dropping that aero on the cobbles too, slightly downhill here. Great place to do it, I'd have thought.
Absolutely, and it's going to just be a fact that she can use her power up because she's certainly not going to be caught before she gets to that arch. She'll take the 4 points, she'll be eliminated, and she'll give her team of Ionian, the defending champions, 4 points onto the board underneath the banner with a considerable advantage over Fast Berglund and, crucially, the bunch behind at 51 seconds.
What a brilliant ride by Katie Hill. That is our longest breakaway of the men's or women's races this evening so far, and this year's whole Zwift Grand Prix. Great ride by her. Berglund looking good in second too. She comes across to get the 3 points, and it looks like Motas of Team Hexagon is going to get the 2. This is where staying out front and securing your points becomes more crucial. She drops her aero power up too. Is she going to hold off that fast chasing pack? Though it does look like she just will, but it's going to be close, Hannah, isn't it?
It's going to be very, very close because take a look at how this is opening up behind the Swedish rider of Team Swedish Swifters. Embring is coming, but Mota is going to hang on for third by the looks of things. Embring will take fourth and take the 1 remaining point. There we have the results. Hill taking the 4, Fast Berglund with 3, Motas 2, Embring with the 1. 2 riders from Team Swedish Swifters scoring there. 4 points for them on the board.
So that's 2 riders out, but 4 points, as you say, exactly the same number of points as Katie Hill scored by herself. So that's where the team points are at the moment. Coalition Alpha now in the lead, still on 8 points. Ionian, our defending champions, in second, but look at all those teams all sitting on 4 points. That's all going to change over the next few sprints because things really start to rack up. On Broad Street, which won't be long now, it'll be 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. 5 riders scoring, 5 out. There are now 72 riders of the 80 who started who are still in play, although it has to be said, looking at the size of this pack, there are quite a few spread out behind it as well. It's been a really hard opening lap, although at times it's come together and been a little bit measured. If you look at the numbers to the right of the screen, in little fits and bursts, it is really hard, this race. This is into a bit of a downhill now as they come back eastward, back into towards the centre of Richmond. And the next sprint is on Broad Street. There's going to be some attacks, surely, Hannah. Can't see this going down to a sprint like this.
We've almost had now that the fact we've had 4 riders eliminated, and especially with Katie Hill of Ionian, who was with such a considerable lead, we've had this neutralisation now. So it's all back together. Everyone is all on the level time. We don't have any riders who have got an advantage, courtesy of Hill now being eliminated. And so it's back to square one almost, and back to where teams and riders are thinking, where can I make the next big impact? The next time is on Broad Street. That's with 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 points. 5 riders eliminated. It's not too long before we'll get to Broad Street, and you can see there's plenty of teams who are just lurking towards the front here, Jez. They're biding their time, but they want to make sure that they're present.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting one because I really had thought someone would hit out hard. Movistar still have plenty of riders there, but not yet scoring. The strength they have in depth as well, that team, I think there's an awful lot of cards yet to be played. If you look at the numbers, the watts per kilo on the right-hand side, this is slightly downhill, and we can see little groups of riders working their way back on because of the little bit of caution and a bit of waiting going on at the front end, though. Not from everyone by the looks of it. Rachel Brown now racking up the watts, knocking on 8 watts per kilo. They're just underneath it. Rachel for the Wahoo Lacole team. And she's drawing clear a couple more with her, Hannah, by the looks of it too. Overlapping. We're getting ever closer to the Broad Street sprint. Don't they know it?
Bridget Falensky has decided that she wants the big points here. She wants 5 points for her squad, her German squad of Beast Mode powered by Rose. And again, they've got another sports director who was guiding their men's counterpart to the Grand Prix earlier on. He's now in their ear, trying to give some motivation, some encouragement to Bridget Walensky here. Darnell has made it across the Swedish rider, but here comes Meyer. This is going to be close. There's Ionian with Mona Lee Keller.
Yeah, this one might be quite hard to call by the looks of it, because we have a big group going for this second sprint on this lap. There's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 points on the line. McCarthy is hanging on for the Rocacorba Cycling, but coming over the top of them, one of the Saris, no-pins riders in the pink and white. That's Wiseman. This is going to be so close, though. Darrow's being dropped as well as we go towards this point.
This is going to be incredibly close. Hexagon are there with Mao, the French woman. There's Nevin of Coalition Alpha, and it's looking like Morg is going to go on and go through this arch and take the 5 points. She's got just over a 1.5 seconds advantage, but Darnell of Movistar, she isn't giving up. But here comes Söderström, 2 riders from Movistar trying to get themselves involved.
Oh, it's going to be so close between these two. It's Coalition Alpha and Movistar as well. Roberts of Aeonian. Aeonian's going to try and hang on to this, Roberts. Well, she got it. Angela Roberts, I think, has got just enough to hang off the charge by Movistar. She will get the 5 points. Oh, it was close on the line there. Söderström so close behind her. She will be out of this race now, though, with 4 points by the looks of it. Söderström, 5 for Roberts, 4 for Söderström. Keller in third. She gets the 3 points, 2 and 1 as you see them. So very evenly spread through the teams as well there. No one team, I should say, scoring 2 sets of points, leaving those teams with plenty yet in play. We see Söderström freewheeling out the back, of course, now.
Ionian matching what Coalition Alpha have done. They were on 8 points. They've now, in one sprint at Broad Street, scored 8 points there, courtesy of 2 riders. They've got themselves deep into the race, but they still have Vicky Whitelaw within their squad. Of course, they already scored with Katie Hill. This has been almost a masterclass from Ionian so far. You can just see the team in that lime green and navy blue jersey.
It really is, isn't it? They are bossing it at this stage. But we know how important these last 2 sprints are. We have the KOM point. There's a long run in now, isn't there? Down to that KOM point, up on Libby Hill, up the cobbles, and then the one very close after it on 23rd Street, I should say. Those 2 can swing an awful lot, because there are a lot of points yet to be had. And don't forget the 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the finish line. So 3 more sprint points yet to come. But Aeonian not just looking consistent, but looking like they've got a game plan today that they are effecting on this race.
You take a look at that team points on the left-hand side here, Jez, with the overall. Ionian on 12, Coalition Alpha on 8, Movistar on 4, alongside Team Swedish Swifters, Toyota Elite, Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024. And then we've got Hexagon and Saris no pins. Only 8 teams have scored. Still 8 teams yet to get a point on that leaderboard.
Yeah, despite the fact that we've seen quite a lot of them. Aber Synergy was the team who were trying very hard early on to make it hard. They haven't scored any points just yet either. But the one thing that does mean is that they still have 5 riders in there. That's the danger, I guess, with this points hunter race, isn't it, Hannah? That just because you haven't scored points, you've got to remember that then means you still have 5 riders in there capable of scoring points across these bigger points waves in these last 3 sprints.
Absolutely, and this is where it can change to the good of those teams who are yet to score. And for example, with Hexagon or Saris no pins, they might be on the relatively low end of the scoring this far. However, there's still so many points to collect at Libby Hill, 23rd Street, and then crucially at that finish line. Now we see almost another little regrouping here in the peloton, a little moment of calm before we expect things are going to split up on Libby Hill.
Yeah, will they wait for Libby Hill? I just wonder. There's an awful lot of riders and teams in here that we've not really talked about too much so far. Let's look at the numbers. Somewhere at or just below 3 watts per kilo for these riders. I keep referring to that number, but it is such a useful one, isn't it? Because it negates the weight of the rider, it's just literally about how many watts they can put out per kilo of body weight itself. It gives a really clear indication of how hard they're trying as well. And you know, the clever regular Zwifters will be watching down that list to see who's pushing as they come through as well. As we say that, exactly that happened, and it's McCarthy who's going on the attack for Rocacorba Cycling. Now look at that watts per kilo there, 9.4. So she really is pushing incredibly hard to get clear of the pack. Let's see if anyone goes with her. Yes, they are. And she's dropped her aero as well, McCarthy.
She has, and the British rider Holdcroft of Next Esports, powered by Insured, is trying to bridge across at the moment. Coalition Alpha just patrolling things at the front of the bunch with Nevin. Here she is in that, I have to say, they've done a spectacular job of both their men's and women's jerseys for this Grand Prix. And now we're starting to see, well, it only takes one rider to kick things all off, doesn't it, Jez? Because now we see more and more riders wanting to be involved. And no, crucially, as we get deeper into this race with only 5.5 kilometers remaining, Nelly Larson is trying to get up there, as is Natalie Stevenson. Lizzie Brooke is patrolling things. There's Rachel Brown. We've already seen her make a move during this race so far. And they'll crest the top of Libby Hill with 3.6 kilometers remaining, so not long now. And then straight into 23rd Street, 1.1 kilometer later. Here we see Holdcroft and McCarthy now with a 4-second advantage over Liz Van Heuveling. Van Heuveling, of course, the teammate of Holdcroft, so she won't be doing too much chasing. But it seems as though, Jez, that they've got a good duo. They've got, although they're on different teams here, Holdcroft and McCarthy, they formed a good alliance.
Yeah, and they're riding very smoothly together. It's a tricky art on Zwift, isn't it? Just to get yourself tucked in behind the other rider, not press too hard, just get the cadence right and sit in neatly behind them. And those who race on or ride on Zwift regularly will know what I mean. But it is tricky, isn't it, at first? Just to get the feel of it, in the same way that it's tricky to get the skill of it right in the real world as well.
Yeah, quite.
Hey.
And it's also about where you use your effort, Jez, too, because if you use it in places where effectively or essentially it's not going to make any difference to the outcome of the race or your performance, you're just throwing away those matches that you so crucially need. And especially now that we're into the crunch point, 4.3 kilometers remain, 2 final intermediate sprints, big points at that finish line. And this is a hard, demanding course. I think arguably, it doesn't perhaps look at when you take a look at the profile in its entirety, but it is a brutal course, and especially because these 2 climbs come in such quick succession that those stronger riders, those who have ridden on this course before, they know exactly how to measure their effort, but also where they really need to lay down the power. And Natalie Stevenson, one of those riders who sensed the danger, she's trying to get away from the bunch. She's got 4 seconds. And if she can try and take some points at the top of Libby Hill here, she could snatch 4 points.
Well, here we go. Right on to Libby Hill as well. Maria Holdcroft has managed to get herself back in the lead as well, the British woman riding for Next Esports. She's onto the toughest part of the climb as well, but don't forget it does drag over the top too. Holdcroft just hanging on to that leading position on that lovely yellow Tron bike as well. Don't forget, as I mentioned at the beginning of the women's race and the men's race, all equipment in this Zwift Grand Prix has been neutralised, so it's the same for everyone, but it is nice to see some of the different bikes. And she goes over the top first. 6 points for Maria Holdcroft, riding for the Next Esports team. Next place will be taken by McCarthy, riding, of course, for the Rocacorba Collective, Kate McCarthy, the Kiwi. And then, Vicky Whitelaw's come up for that one, I think, by the looks of it as well. That's the first time we've really mentioned the Aussie so far, riding for Aeonian, so they get more points there as well. So Aeonian get the 3 points. And once again, no one team scoring 2 sets of points there as well. But all of those names on the left-hand side of the screen, big, strong riders in Zwifting, all now eliminated from the race. There's not going to be many riders left in this leading group. It's going to be quite a small pack, isn't it, Hannah?
It will be a small pack, but what we're seeing is there's still some big riders here who are still, first of all, yet to score, and they're taking a big risk by not scoring at Libby Hill. And when you take a look down at even those riders within the top 10 right now, the big notable riders, Lizzie Brooke, the British rider, Liz van Hooling, Wiseman, the Belgian rider, also Charlotte Colclough, Arielle Verhaeren, Sandrine Etienne, the 4th place at the UCI Esports World Championships. And so we've got a real select group of riders. Gabriela Guerra is still there, the Brazilian rider in the white and pink jersey. But now we're taking on this descent. They'll take this sweeping right-hand corner. They're heading for 23rd Street. They'll get there in 600 meters time.
The first 7 riders across the line in Broad Street will score points, but they'll all be out of the race, leading a very, very small pack who are going to be battling out this final one as well. Riders dropping their arrows on the rise that takes them up to Broad Street as well. And they're onto the cobbles too. Here it is. This is really tough at this stage, and by the looks of it, it is Bjarhed, the Swedish rider, who's trying to go with Verhaeren. Verhaeren, the American, of course, for Aeonian, is going to take it. So Verhaeren there, taking the 7 points. Did I say Broad Street? I meant 23rd Street. I'm getting my streets mixed up. Wow.
Arielle Verhaeren made light work coming out of that right-hand corner, clicking it down a couple of gears, big explosive power, and almost flew over the top of 23rd Street there. Verhaeren with the 7, Bjarhed 6, Liz van Hooling taking 5, Elisa Haag with the 4, Wiseman with 3, Charlotte Colclough taking 2, and Nevin taking 1.4 Coalition Alpha.
Just like that as well, some big names now out of this race, leading us down to the finish line. Fast descent down to the finish line as well. Let's just let those who have been eliminated by that sprint coast their way back out on the descent. They'll be out of the way fairly soon. Kristen Kulczynski now going on the attack for Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024. We'll ignore the position to the right for the moment, just while we wait for the riders who are filtering their way back, having got their notification through their app that they are eliminated. They're freewheeling and back out of the race. Kristen Kulczynski waiting by the looks of it, the American, for this final sprint to the line.
She's willing to lay down on the line here, Jez. It's 1.5 kilometers remaining. She knows she's got a strong companion in Lizzie Brooke. Here's Gabriela Guerra, Sandrine Etienne, the French woman, now being chased down by Nevin, the Norwegian. This is really interesting. 5 riders, 5 different teams, all trying to score big points here at the finish line.
Well, don't forget, all 5 of them will score points as well, because we've only got a few riders in play here, and there are points for the first 8 finishers at the finish line. So thankfully for this little, very select leading group now in this race that started with 80 riders, has been smashed apart, is going to have I think, well, this could be actually, by the looks of it, Hannah, even more tactical than we thought. No one wants to mess this up and go too soon, do they?
But I think as well, these riders, and they know each other very well, as we go through 1,000 meters remaining, one thing they'll know is who is a better sprinter than one, or who can rely on their sprint over the other riders. And so perhaps for those riders who can't quite rely on that sprint, are they just going to take it down to this finish? Do they want to try and launch something early into this final 700, 600 meters and to really try and take a flyer? Because Kulczynski of 2024, she knows that she can hold high power for a long time, but she knows she hasn't got the fastest kick.
No, and Hannah, she's also not waiting. The American rider is going. She's been knocking on 7.5, 8 watts per kilo for the last couple of 100 meters. She's clear, but she's being chased by Gabriela Guerra, the Brazilian rider for Saris No Pins. She is closing up that gap. Lizzie Brooks coming back too. It's not done yet with these 8 points. Kulczynski doing everything to try and hang on as she comes towards the line. They're in the finishing straight right now. We can see Kirsten Kulczynski actually on our screen there, the American rider. Now settling back a little bit, getting back on top of that big gear by the looks of it. And we've still got another kick yet to come, Hannah, by the looks of it. Coming up behind them though, they've not seen this one coming. One of the Hexagon riders.
This is Sandrine Etienne, and she's taken a flyer. The others have been looking at each other, watching, waiting, and this is the French woman of Hexagon in the orange and black kit who's decided she wants those 8 points, and now it's left Guerra to chase.
Guerra's using her aero power up, as are the others as well. Lizzie Brooke doing likewise. Brooke might get the flyer on this one and take the last 8 points. I think that's exactly what she's going to do. The British rider Lizzie Brooke has used her power up at just the right time to come over the top of Guerra, who's going to take second in that final sprint, ahead of Etienne and Kulczynski, who has emptied the tank in that final run into the finish line. Wow. What a race. I have no idea, Hannah, what that will have done to the points tally as well. Such is the hectic nature of this points hunter format. I can't wait to see the screen pop up on the left of our screen to tell us the final points, because that was, wow. That was great, wasn't it? Exactly what we want.
Absolutely. Such is the thrill, and just how open it continues to be, but also how this course has completely erupted the bunch, and how tactical it ended up becoming, but also just how physical, as we see Marb and Abrahamson go through the finish. They should also pick up points, as should Filinski of Beast Mode powered by Rose.
Wow, what a fantastic opening round for both the men and the women of this Zwift Grand Prix Season 2. What a perfect way to start it. Don't forget, folks, if you enjoyed the Points Hunter format, as I'm sure you have enjoyed watching it here on our channel, you can see the results of the that last run across the finish line. Lizzie Brooke timing everything perfectly to finish ahead of Gabriela Guerra. And once again, the points very evenly spread around there as well. Beast Mode scoring 2 sets of points in that final one, so saving riders for the final sprint. The big question, of course, is what has that done to the team standings, because this is a team race. Much as we're interested in each of these individual sprints and how they go, the riders now rolling in have finished the whole distance and scored nothing. They're those poor riders I feel most sorry for. But actually, having said that, Hannah, as you said earlier, they may well have been riders who were involved in making the pace so hard in the first place. That's that other team element, not just the scoring of points.
Absolutely, and the team tactic comes in many different forms. They might not have been riders to put points on the leaderboard for their teams tonight. However, the way in which they've ridden to make sure that the pace is incredibly difficult and really form a select group. You've got different ways in order to be a teammate, and you take a look at this top 8. Lizzie Brooke taking 8 points, Guerra with the 7, Etienne taking the 6, Kulczynski holding on for the 5. Marb giving Beast Mode power by Rose 5 points, along with her teammate Filinski, who took the sole 1, making it 5, should I say. Abrahamson with the 3, and Danel taking the 2, the Swedish rider for Movistar. So it's going to be close at the top of the standings, because Ionian were almost on a walk away. What has it done? Almost drum roll, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And lots of those riders, including the winner of that final sprint, Lizzie Brooke of Wahoo Lacol, choosing to use her aero power up in the finishing sprint. It seems like the most obvious place to use it, Hannah, doesn't it? But not everyone used it there. And I must admit, I quite like the fact that in the opening round we've gone a little bit light with the power ups and made it a pure points-based racing race. There will be more power-ups and different power-ups being used throughout the rest of the 7 rounds in total, but there's something quite nice about just keeping it neat and tidy with the aero, and you've got to be really specific about where and when you use it, because there were only ever 2 of them in any one of those races.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, Jez, in the fact that you've got 2 power-ups, and you have to be very mindful of where you use it. If you don't use it on the first lap, you can't carry it over into the second lap to give yourself 2 power-ups to use in the final 16.2 kilometers. So again, it comes down to the fact you've only got 1 option, but I also like the fact that every rider of each team has the same type of power-up. It's a completely level, fair playing field. Everybody gets the same power-up at the same location, and so you can use your power-up where you want to. And on this course, very different options of where you want to use it, whether you want to use it to attack. As we've seen tonight, there's been brilliant places to make attacks, whether that's in the men's Grand Prix or the women's Grand Prix, but also whether you just want to use it to save your energy when you're mid-pack.
Well, it's not just the power-ups that are going to differ across the 7 rounds as well. The worlds in which we're racing are going to differ. In the mid part of the course, we go very much into Watopia, but we don't always stay there. The Glasgow circuit is used in round 3 for the women's race. And then we go into some pretty hardcore regular Watopia rounds as we our way through those Zwift Racing Leagues, ZRL or ZRL, depending on where you're coming from, mid-races in this series, which is a nice touch this year, actually. An opportunity for those of you who are racing in the ZRL, the Zwift Racing League, to get a little bit of a preview into courses and race formats as we use it in the Zwift Grand Prix. Well then, team points, here we go. Aeonian, our defending champions. There's no two ways about it, Hannah. They have absolutely bossed it, haven't they? Just ahead of ahead of Saris Nopins in second. But Saris Nopins are on the same score as Team Swedish Zwifters, who we saw doing some really nice teamwork too. Those 3 teams pretty well clear as well by the looks of it. But Aeonian, what a result for them. What can you spot in there, Hannah? Who's done
Incredible,
well?
I have to say. 11 points clear. Ionian over Saris Nopins, the next best placed team, along with Team Swedish Swifters. That's been a runaway for Ionian. Chapeau to the riders, the sports director, the tactics and strategy in which they deployed this evening. But I have to say, Next Esports, powered by Insured, in 4th place there on 11 points. A new team, newcomers to this league. Very well done to them. But also when you take a look at Saris Nopins, another squad who last year they finished 6th overall in the Grand Prix. They've come here, they've learnt from what they did in the first season of the Grand Prix, but I also think they've decided they want to hit the ground running from the very first round, and they finished in second. Perhaps for Wahoo Lacole, they might have been expecting a little bit more. They only scored the 8 points courtesy of Lizzie Brooks, so perhaps a little bit of work to do for Wahoo Lacole because they've got a strong team. But of course, we know when you've got 80 riders from 16 different teams, crucially and essentially all trying to achieve the same thing, it's very difficult to put that into practice.
Well, look, in their social media, lots of these teams talk about learning from the inaugural Zwift Grand Prix last year and bringing in that learning and improving and building on things for this, the second season. One team that's definitely done that so far is Team Swedish Zwifters. This format seems to have played well in their favour. They were 7th out of the 12 teams we had competing in the women's category last year. They now find themselves sitting in 3rd place, those Swedish riders, the Swedish Zwifters, so that is a great start for them. I guess it has to be said, Hannah, that the next round, next week, 1 week today, the Mountains Points race on the Alpe d'Huez is a quite different race. There are 3 intermediate sprint points during that 17.3 kilometre race, and all finishing positions are scored, so absolutely where everyone finishes in that race, all 80 riders, will count for their teams. It could be quite a different affair that might suit different riders, because this had an awful lot of punching involved in it on this course, isn't it? That's much more likely to be a steady affair next week.
I think when you take a look at the makeup of the 5 riders that made up teams this evening, it was very varied. You had your sprinters, a couple of time trialists, perhaps one climber within your roster, whereas next week as we head to the Alpe d'Huez, you're wanting to try and bring all 5 riders who are exceptional climbers to your squad. So for certain, we'll see different riders line up alongside and for their teams. But there's big points available, as you just said. It's every rider will score, but 300 points for the winner at the top of Alpe d'Huez.
Wow, yep, that's going to be quite a hotly contested finish line. Well, while we wait for the series points to be completely tallied up, and we'll come back to them, maybe we'll also revisit the men's results so that you're all aware of that right at the end of our live broadcast here. Let's have a look at what else is coming up on Zwift in the coming weeks. The Tour of Watopia continues, tearing across the flats and conquering the biggest climbs in Watopia. Your chance, of course, to explore the new roads as well. Check off the stages by knocking out a ride on demand or joining in the Tour of Watopia. And double your XP on your schedule as well. As well as that, of course, the Zwift Racing League continues. The WTRL Round 2 registration is now open. And the Z Racing, or Z Racing, depending on where you're from, monthly series, the Race Watopia, is starting on Monday. And available all week, Stage 4 is on the Volcano Circuit, CCW, for 4 laps. So whether you're experienced or you're new to all this, check it all out at zwift.com/racing. And don't forget, the Zwift Grand Prix, Round 2, of course, back next week, right here where you're watching this, of course, and they're going to be tackling, as I said, the Alpe d'Huez Zwift in Watopia, and we're going to see a completely different kind of racing next week. Much the same riders, although some of these teams might choose to swap in and swap out riders, because most of the team have, what have we got, 7 or 8 riders on their roster that they swap in and out of their team of 5 for each of these rounds. So a little bit of shuffling, and dare I say it, room for a few riders to get maybe pick up the odd cold and sit out a week or two. I've been battling away, Hannah, with a nasty cold for the last week or two, trying not to cough in our broadcast, like a lot of probably some of the riders maybe. So we wish them well in staying well across this whole series. Talking of the series, here they are, the men's result by team after round 1. Abus Synergy in the lead on 35 points ahead of Next Esports, powered by Ensured, on 28. Their total. Hexagon, then ahead of BL13, who had that brilliant opening round tonight. That new team setting out a really strong stall at the beginning, ahead of Hexagon on 22. Movistar, Coalition Alpha, Wahoo Lacol, and Toyota Elite Cycling on 14 points after round 1. That's the men. That's the second page, taking us all the way down to the only team there not to score a point, the French team of Foudre down there at the bottom, but looking to work their way up as well. Beast Mode on 12, Swedish Shifters on 10, Saris Nopins on 8, Restart on 6, Primor on 4, Castelli 2, and Deepak sitting on that 1 point and looking to build from there. And here's the women's results. Aeonian, as we expected, right on top after round 1 on 35 points, ahead of Saris Nopins on 28. Team Swedish Zwifters setting out a great start to the series, ahead of Next Esports, Hexagon, Virginia's Blue Ridge 2024, Beast Mode, Coalition Alpha down in 8th place. And that should take us, I think, to our second page. There it is, Wahoo Lacol, despite being very evident throughout that race, sitting in 9th place, just ahead of the team who have a very similar kit, dare I say it as a commentator, slightly confusing at times, the Toyota Elite Cycling team on 10, Movistar on 8, and looking to build from there, because they weren't sparkling in this opening round, but I have no doubt they'll have some good rounds yet to come. Roca Corba are in 12th, Primor in 13th, and BL13 on the next one down. That was your result from the women's race, and that is the conclusion of a brilliant opening round of 7, which take us right the way through to the middle of January. Christmas comes in the middle of this, Hannah. It's going to be, I think, really, it's going to be, personally for me, really exciting sharing this with you, with Matt Stevens, with the whole Zwift family. I feel part of it already. I've broken myself in.
Absolutely. And I think the beauty of this Grand Prix, Jez, is the fact that each week we've got a different type of race. We've got a totally different course. Whereas we've seen today, perhaps an undulating course, one for the punchers, the rouleurs. Next week is all about the climbers. The climbers have their night and their day to shine. And it'll be very interesting to see how teams will race next week, because of course there is a time cut. They've got to finish within 5 minutes of the winner of round 2, and so you can lose out on big points if you don't score.
Well, you will have to join us next week to see how it goes. It's going to be Matt Stevens swapping in for me alongside Hannah Walker yet again. And here we go. The Zwift Grand Prix Season 2 is underway. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for supporting us. Go and check out everything that's happening at zwift.com/racing. I know you will, but in the meantime, from me, Jez Cox, and from Hannah Walker, thanks for your company, and bye-bye.